Have you ever wondered what it would be like to live through the collapse of a great empire? To see towering monuments crumble and powerful armies scatter? History is littered with the ghosts of once mighty civilizations. From the sun-drenched banks of the Nile to the wind-swept steppes of Asia, the fall of an empire isn't just a single event. It's a slow, often painful process, a symphony of decline played out over generations. But it's also a story of resilience, of rebirth, and of the incredible human capacity to adapt and build anew. Today, we're embarking on a journey through time to explore the epic tale of how empires fall and what rises from their ashes. We'll look at the Roman Empire, the gold standard of imperial collapse, and see how a combination of internal strife, economic woes, and external pressures brought the eagle crashing to the earth. But was it really a sudden, catastrophic fall? Or was it a more gradual transformation, a slow fading of the old world into the new? Let's start with Rome. For centuries, the Roman Empire was the undisputed superpower of the ancient world. Its legions marched from the misty shores of Britain to the deserts of Mesopotamia. Its engineers built aqueducts and roads that still stand today. Roman law and language shaped the very foundations of Western civilization. It seemed invincible, eternal. So, what went wrong? The answer isn't simple. It wasn't one bad emperor or one lost battle. It was a perfect storm of problems brewing for centuries. Politically, the empire became a revolving door of emperors. The 3rd century crisis saw dozens of rulers rise and fall, often violently, in just 50 years. This constant instability weakened the central government and made long-term planning impossible. The empire was simply too vast to be managed effectively by one man in a world without instant communication. Emperor Diocletian recognized this and split the empire into 2 halves, the West and the East, in a desperate attempt to make it more governable. It was a smart move, but ultimately, it only delayed the inevitable for the western half. Economically, Rome was in a death spiral. Endless wars were ruinously expensive. To pay for the army in a bloated bureaucracy, emperors debased the currency, mixing less precious metal into their coins. This led to runaway inflation. A loaf of bread that cost a few small coins in the morning might cost a handful by the evening. Trade routes became unsafe, disrupted by barbarian raids and internal chaos. The rich retreated to their fortified country villas, creating self-sufficient estates and essentially opting out of the imperial economy. The tax base shrank, leaving the state even more starved for cash. It was a vicious cycle. Then there were the barbarians. We often picture hordes of savages storming the gates of Rome, but the reality was far more complex. Many of these groups, like the Goths and Vandals, didn't initially want to destroy the empire, wanted to be a part of it. They were often refugees, pushed into Roman territory by climate change and the migrations of other peoples, like the Huns. For a time, Rome tried to incorporate them, using them as soldiers or foederati to defend the frontiers. But mistreatment and broken promises often turned these allies into enemies. The sack of Rome in 410 by the Visigoths wasn't the end, but it was a devastating psychological blow. How could the eternal city fall? When the last Western Roman emperor, a young boy ironically named Romulus Augustulus, was deposed in 476, it wasn't a world-shattering event for most people. Life for the average farmer or craftsman had been getting harder for a long time. The fall was more like a long, slow sunset than a sudden blackout. But as the sun set on the Western Roman Empire, a new dawn was breaking. This is the part of the story we often forget, the rebirth. The collapse of central authority wasn't just an end, it was a beginning. Power didn't vanish, it just became localized. Roman governors, barbarian kings, and Christian bishops stepped into the vacuum, carving out new kingdoms from the old provincial map. The Franks in Gaul, the Visigoths in Spain, the Anglo-Saxons in Britain, these were the seeds of modern European nations. The Eastern Roman Empire, which we now call the Byzantine Empire, didn't fall at all. With its capital at the strategically brilliant city of Constantinople, it weathered the storm and continued to thrive for another 1,000 years. Preserving classical knowledge and acting as a shield for Europe against Eastern invasions, it was a direct continuation of Roman traditions, law, and culture. The legacy of Rome was everywhere, Latin language evolved into French, Spanish, Italian, and Portuguese. The Roman legal system provided the framework for many modern legal codes. And most importantly, the Christian Church, which had grown within the empire, became the primary unifying force in post-Roman Europe. Monasteries became centers of learning, preserving ancient texts that would have otherwise been lost. The dream of a unified Christian empire, a new Rome, would inspire rulers from Charlemagne to Napoleon for centuries to come. This pattern of decline and rebirth isn't unique to Rome. Look at the Han Dynasty in China. Like Rome, it unified a vast territory, built incredible infrastructure, and created a golden age of culture and technology. And like Rome, it crumbled under the weight of political corruption. Peasant rebellions fueled by economic inequality and pressure from nomadic peoples on its borders. After its collapse in 220 AD, China entered a period of fragmentation known as the Three Kingdoms. It was a time of epic warfare and chaos, yet Chinese civilization endured. The concept of a unified China, the Middle Kingdom, remained a powerful ideal. After centuries of division, the Sui and then the Tang dynasties would eventually reunite the empire. Building upon the foundations of the Han and ushering in another brilliant golden age, the cycle continued. Or consider the Ottoman Empire, the sick man of Europe. For over 600 years, it controlled a massive territory spanning 3 continents. But by the 19th century, it was struggling with nationalism among its diverse ethnic groups, economic competition from industrializing Europe, and military defeats. Its slow, painful decline lasted over a century. When it was finally dissolved after World War I, its territories were carved up, creating much of the modern Middle East. The fall of the Ottoman Empire gave birth to the Republic of Turkey, a new secular nation-state forged from the heartland of the old empire, and a host of other countries still grappling with the legacy of that collapse today. So what lessons can we draw from the fall of these mighty empires? First, no empire is forever. Success breeds complexity, and complexity can lead to fragility. A system that works for a small city-state may not work for a continent-spanning empire. Second, the causes of collapse are almost always multiple and interconnected: political rot, economic weakness, social unrest, and external pressures. It's rarely just one thing. Third, and perhaps most importantly, collapse is transformation, not annihilation. Ideas, cultures, and people survive. They adapt, they merge, and they create something new. The end of one world is always the beginning of another. The dust from a fallen empire provides fertile ground for new growth. The story of empires reminds us of the cyclical nature of history. Power shifts, borders change, and great monuments turn to ruins. But the human story, the story of building communities, preserving knowledge, and striving for a better future, that story never truly ends. It just starts a new chapter. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through history. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the past. Let me know in the comments which fallen empire you find most interesting. Until next time, stay curious.